Hello and welcome to the Sport for Business Daily. It's the eve of the centenary commemoration of Bloody Sunday, and we're joined this morning by Cian Murphy from the GAA's Communications Department. You have been very much at the heart of this. What was it back in 2014, 2015, those few years ago now, that sparked a personal interest in you to get particularly the Graves project off the ground and to carry it through to what has become a very special commemoration?
Yeah, thanks, Rob, first of all, for the opportunity and for the interest you've taken all week and the focus you've shown on this. Like any big organisation, it's not really about the individual. So I just did the job that I was asked to do, and was very honoured and privileged to be asked to do it. The only person who deserves any credit this week, or the only debt that is owed by the GAA or by us as a group of people, is to Michael Foley. In 2011, he started a three-year project when nobody cared, when no one was watching. Michael Foley was stumbling around graveyards on his own. The result of that was his incredible book, The Bloodied Field, in 2014. And out of that then, we were alerted to the fact that 8 of the 14 were unmarked graves for a variety of different reasons. But on the back of his book, a man called Richard Staveley, who is a relative of Jane Boyle, he contacted the GAA to say the Boyle family wanted to put up a headstone for Jane, who was the only woman killed. She was a week away from getting married, would end up being buried in her wedding dress. And so on the 95th anniversary, the Boyle family, with Michael Foley and with the GAA, they erected a headstone to Jane. And that was the start of the momentum. Michael wrote a piece for the programme. Ireland played Australia in the international rules that day. And there were some torches lit in Hill 16, very small, simple, very powerful ceremony. And but in the match programme, Michael had made reference to the fact that a large number of people who died at Croke Park were in unmarked graves. And it was like, you get moments that are like a punch in the stomach. And that's how I would describe I was working on the programme, I was proofing the programme, and read this, and I thought it was a mistake. And there isn't a central oracle. People think that a big organisation like the GAA has a central oracle that you just go and you check. You know, it's at any given time, it's a group of people, it's a collection of people. You know, so spoke to a couple of people and said, "Do you know about this? Is this?" And spoke to Michael, and he said, yeah, he had visited all the sites and could verify that 8 of the 14 were actually unmarked graves, just bare grass. So a very simple conversation. I spoke to Pádraig Duffy, who was Director General at the time, and I said, there's a situation, this is the situation, we have an opportunity to do something about it. And Pádraig, to his eternal credit, was just go get it done. And there was never a conversation about cost implications. There was never a conversation about fallout, pushback or blowback. It was like, this is the right thing to do. We need to get this done. Let's go and do it. And that's it. And it just so happened, it's not that I individually did anything at all. But again, people think that big organizations work with thousands and thousands of people. It's like, okay, that's a good idea. Off you go. And, you know, so that's, we started work, thanks to Michael, thanks to the Staveley family and Jane Boyle's relatives. And then we immediately started working with Michael to stand on the shoulders of his immense research, and to make contacts then with the families that we knew were in unmarked graves, and basically make ourselves available. And because while we have an interest and a passion for this, they have the immediate family first. But what it did was, it was significant because it connected these families with Croke Park again. Because one of the truths that we have to face up to is the fact that for whatever reason, for the best part of 90 years, contact was lost. And while we can't fix that, we can only do what we're able to do on our watch, and that's address it and make contact with these people again and let them know that they have a GA family and they have a Croke Park family. And the best thing that we can do as an association to remember these people and to respect the lives that they led, is to remember them as people. Because the problem with Bloody Sunday, in the telling of Bloody Sunday, was that it had become a footnote in history, and it had become two numbers. It had become 14 people were murdered, or it had become Tipperary footballer Michael Hogan and 13 civilians are murdered. And there was no more depth. There was no more depth, no more substance to that. But even in the case of Michael Hogan, so much myth had come into it. The match had been elevated to an All-Ireland final. His role had been elevated to a captain. Those things aren't accurate. No, they're not. They're not life or death. But even what we thought we knew about the story, there were flaws in it. So we made a decision from the very beginning that there was a story that had to be told, and the only story that really matters in the telling of Bloody story, in the telling of Bloody Sunday, is the human story, the human tragedy that it was. So there was a very conscious decision from day one that not to get sucked into a narrative about the who or the why that they died, not the who killed them, not how did they die. That there was a story that hadn't been told, and that was these are real people. We're talking 3 school children under the age of 14, a young woman with her fiance on her last date before she gets married. Two teen, like one 20-year-old, he's a club footballer, a 19-year-old starting out in life, then a group of men, married men, fathers, husbands, sons and brothers. And that those people, the proper way to tell the Bloody Sunday story was to talk about these people, and so that they wouldn't be a footnote in history anymore. The North Star was one of the earliest meetings with Michael. Was he spoke to us about Eli Wiesel. I don't know if he mentioned Eli Wiesel on his call earlier, but so Eli Wiesel was a Holocaust survivor who won a Nobel Prize in 1968. And as part of his acceptance of that, he spoke about to forget your dead is akin to killing them a second time. And from the minute we heard that, we just knew that's the North Star now for us. That if we allow ourselves to forget these people, we've killed them a second time. The only thing worse than possibly having somebody murdered is that they're forgotten. So it was on our watch. It was our duty of care to make sure that whatever we did, that these people didn't feel that they were forgotten. And I hope it's not for me to say, but I hope that the work that we've done in the last 5 years, particularly around the graves, and then in the last 12 months with colleagues like Lisa Hayden, Alan Milton, Niamh Boyle, Siobhan Brady and Jamie O'Toole, that we've managed to, and Noel Quinn, that we've managed to do justice to Michael's pioneering work and to make sure that these people aren't forgotten.
They are powerful words and powerfully emotional response to something which, as you say, could have been washed away like a pebble on the beach. The waves of history keep rolling forward. The fact that we know those names now, Jerome O'Leary, the 10-year-old who was one of the unmarked graves, Patrick O'Dowd, that lovely story of lifting people out of the stadium before he was shot himself, and Jane Boyle, an incredibly evocative story of being buried in her wedding dress. We know those names now, and as such, we remember those people. It wasn't just a single event. But you're right, it can be very difficult, and there is a political element to this, there is a sporting element to this, there are all sorts of things around such a defining moment as it turned out in history. But the reality is that it took probably 2 minutes and a hail of bullets, and it changed those 14 lives. It ended those 14 lives, and it changed the lives of all of those people who knew them in the immediate aftermath. When it comes to the actual day itself, there will be a commemoration at Croke Park Stadium. Obviously, the stadium will be empty because of reasons of 2020 as opposed to 1920. But it will still be an incredibly emotional moment, I think, even if we're looking at it through the screens. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is going to look like when it comes in 24 hours' time?
Yeah, so we've had to pivot and reimagine like everybody else. It has flipped and changed in the last 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, and then the last 6 months. So what we will do is we will again we will take our inspiration from what happened a few years ago. We will have a special narration to remember the 14 lives, to remember them as not as that number, to that as that group of people, the lives, the schools they went to, the jobs they had, the streets they lived on, the families that they had. As this happens, we'll have a series of 14 torches lit in a special quadrant on Hill 16, which obviously, unfortunately, the stadium is closed and we can't have any spectators there. We'll also have a series of pillars of lights that will go up out of the stadium. So people across the city hopefully will be able to see 14 beams of light come out of Croke Park. Another small gesture to encourage people maybe to ask what is that light, and that somebody will be able to tell them that's what that's about. We will have Uachtaráin the Héireann on Taoiseach will be in attendance and will join Uachtaráin Cumhaileach Assail, John Horn, and our Stuart Tomás O'Rian in the Lane of a Wreath. And the spot picked, because there are 14 different locations, some on the streets outside, some on the canal. We have we've picked an area in front of Gate 43 at the front of Hill 16, which is a spot where Michael Hogan was fatally wounded, as the place where those wreaths will be laid. To conclude, then we have an exceptional piece of music, which was the anchor to the iconic videos that Lisa Hayden and Michael Foley and 53-6 were involved in. So Colin McAnumra supplied the music to that. He especially commissioned a piece of music entitled More Than a Game, and Colin was a real joy and a privilege to work with him. He had his own connection to this story, his own passion and love for this story. So he would perform on Hill 16, and then the pitch, as the GA is, it's about games. We will then depart, and obviously all of that will happen socially distant and in accordance with all the guidelines. And then we will depart, and the stage will be set then for the Leinster final. But all of the matches that are played this weekend across the GA will have a moment's silence for those who died. The interesting thing about Croke Park is that when the GA made the decision to buy it from Frank Deneen in 1913, there was a vote, would we go at Croke Park, or the other location was actually not terribly far from you. It was Elm Park on the south side, and there was only one vote in it. I think the vote was 8-7. That's how close the vote was, whether we'd have that city centre location or an outskirts location where we could probably grow and develop an awful lot easier. And you'd probably see in a different time that the GA would maybe have left Jones's Road, gone to maybe a greenfield site in the Phoenix Park, and grown. But the reality is that the 21st of November 1920 ties us to Croke Park, ties us there forever. We'll never leave, because it's the reality is that it's not. It is the place where Ring and Mackie and Kerr and DJ and Henry and now TJ and all those people, and likewise Purcell and Stockwell and Mick O'Connell and Jack O'Shea and Brian Mullins, and it is that place. But it's also this other place, and it belongs to us, and it comes back to that thing that we would never leave, because we can't leave, because it's not just a pitch. And I know that might seem a bit too emotional, but sometimes things should be too emotional, and this is one of those times.
They absolutely should. More than a stadium, more than a game, as the piece of music which we'll hear tomorrow, and indeed more than a sport. This is something which you have done together with your colleagues in the GAA, which has really struck a chord and has really justifiably remembered those who fell on November the 21st, 1920. Whatever you're doing on Saturday at just after 6 p.m, I would urge you to pause, reflect, look up at the lights, look at whatever screen you can find that the ceremony is being broadcast on, and remember those 14 individuals in the same way that the association has so powerfully remembered them over the last number of years, especially will do long into the future. Thank you for everything you've done as part of that, and thank you for taking the time to explain some of it to us today, Cian Murphy from the GAA.
All the best, Rob. Thanks very much. My pleasure.